When you feel like life has dealt you a hand of unfair cards, instead of voting, you double down and you stuck in the game. You faced battles, you felt broken, but hey, do us a favor, put your hand on your heart. You feel that? You're still here. Welcome to the Resilience Files Unlocked, where survival meets transformation. Welcome back to the Resilience Files podcast. I'm your host, Carrie Bernuns. This space exists for honest conversations about survival, healing, reinvention, and the quiet strength it takes to rebuild when life doesn't always go as planned. Because resilience isn't about pretending you're okay. It's about choosing to keep going even when you're not. Trigger warning for this episode. This episode includes discussions of loss, grief, substance use, and mental health challenges. Please take care of yourself while listening. I am so excited to share our amazing guest on today. Today's guest is Athina Weiss. As we do here on the Resilience Files podcast, we either have a guest reader, I myself would read, or our guests themselves would read. Well, we have a guest reader today. Today's guest essay reader is Patricia Lee. She's going to read Athina's essay that she submitted, and then we're going to get into a discussion with Athina herself. So without further ado, please take it away.
How do you go on after losing the most important person in your life? Unfortunately, this was an answer I was forced to discover on my own, a month after my 14th birthday. When I was 13, my mom found out she was in a late stage of cancer. It was all very confusing for me. The hardest part was that she would act as though everything was fine. I would cry alone, sometimes because I never wanted to cry in front of her. She was always so strong. I didn't want to make her weaker or burden her with my tears. When my mom was very sick, my parents decided to send my older brothers and I to Greece to stay with my dad's family we had never met. And they promised to come soon. I remember it like being stuck in a prison. I still vividly remember the day my mom arrived. I didn't recognize the person smiling back at me. For a moment, the sight of her hit in the chest like a ton of bricks. She was in a wheelchair for the first time in her life. Her arms and face were so thin, but her stomach was bloated. Even as I close my eyes now, I am transported back to that moment and the grief envelops me. Fortunately, I have a much greater capacity to sit with my grief and allow this feeling to be here. But that was not always the case. My mom stayed with us for a week or two, but then she begged my dad to take her back to Canada. She knew her time was up. They left us in Greece, and no one warned me that when I said goodbye to my mom in the airport that day, it was the last time I was ever going to talk to her while she was still alive. I don't blame her for not having the strength to tell me. I can't even imagine having to say goodbye to my daughter for the last time. We got the phone call maybe 2 days later that she had passed away. I barely remember going home or the months that followed. I returned to high school that fall as a hollow shell of the bubbly person I was the year before. That year at school, I found my way to the smoke pit. Someone offered me a puff of marijuana, and I was finally able to giggle again and feel a little lighter and happier. At home, no one was checking up on me. I've always said I'd rather be lucky than good, and I know how lucky I am to have never been killed or raped, but I've come close enough both times while partying. These actions were a desperate cry for attention, attachment, and a longing for the love and the connection I didn't have at home anymore. I had little respect left for my body or my health. On my 16th birthday, while working at the racetrack, I met a guy who was 5 years older than me. His name was Chris. And little did I know when we met for the first time that day, he would be the one person who has been with me every step of my life since then. We started a relationship that I now know was based on codependency, but this allowed me some normalcy in my life. And I went to university and obtained a bachelor's of science degree. I was getting to a point when I had accomplished so much, but still felt there was more to life. I was still smoking weed to feel better, and I had a hard time talking about my mother at all. I started self researching spirituality, and it really resonated with me. I ended up signing on to do some hypnotherapy sessions. And this was the first bit of true, deep healing work that I had begun. After a few sessions, some other things in my life lined up that I decided to ask Chris what he felt about trying for a baby. We got pregnant very easily. And since day one of finding out I was pregnant, we have been on an accelerated healing journey. I cut out smoking weed as soon as I found out I was pregnant. And I learned a lot about myself and how strongly I have been using it as a coping mechanism. Becoming a parent changes your life and who you are. I began to learn about my own developmental trauma and its effect, as well as learning about generational trauma. I hated myself at times for being so dissociated from my body for so long that I couldn't feel if my milk was letting down, or if my baby was even getting any milk, or if my body was failing me. These are the types of thoughts that are common in first time mothers, but not enough people are sharing them. I never knew until I experienced it myself. Everything that I have been through so far has helped me come to this place that I am in right now, which is a rebirth of myself and my soul. I recently started my own business called Athena's Wellness Wisdom, which has led me here to share my story with all of you. My goal is to educate as many people as I can about the possibilities for change by strengthening the mind body connection. Humans are wired for connection. Love is the most important thing in life, and it starts with loving yourself. I want the world to be a better place for my daughter and for every one of us. I truly believe we can make that happen.
Wow, thank you so much for reading her story. And Athena, wow, thank you so much for trusting us with that. Before we get started, we want to know, how are you doing today?
Yeah, it's interesting hearing somebody else read your.
Yeah. Good, good. Yeah, I feel like sometimes hearing our story reminds us of how far we've already come and for us to feel proud of something. I would like to go back to life before the loss. Take us back to before you went to Greece, take us back to before everything changed. What did safety look like back then? And what was your relationship with your mom like?
Yeah, so it's interesting because now that I've been through like a lot of my healing journey, I do know that there was quite a lot in my like. I'm 6 years younger than one of my brothers and 4 years younger than the other one. So I kind of do know that my mom had her first kind of closer together, and she was only 19 when she had my oldest brother. Um, And then they had a bit of a big break, and then when I came along, I know that we had a nanny for the beginning. I had a Filipino accent when I did because I think I spent a lot more time with the nanny than with my own mom and dad. Mom had just kind of started one career at that time. She's
Mhm.
definitely, yeah,
Yeah,
function, as in families and everything. Um,
yeah,
yeah, but of course, like my mom was definitely one of my best friends, and I really enjoyed spending time with her and being with her, and she was kind of like she was the one that brought in our family. She was definitely,
yeah.
like, the head of the house, I would say. Um,
Mhm.
a connection and, making sure we all had dinner together and that sort of thing. Um, yeah, and then I remember I went into high school that year before, and my being in with all these mixture of people, and I was definitely the kid that would go around and, you know try to join the groups. Like I hated the fact that there was different groups and these kids didn't want to hang out with these kids. Well, I have friends in this group and I have friends in this group. So I really tried to bring everybody together. It was definitely a lot more fun and a lot of creativity. I was really into writing back then as well.
Wow. Thank you so much for sharing that. I mean, I feel like it's very important that we recognize who we were prior to survival mode, prior to the moment that shifted everything. And to even hear that you were the youngest and your mom, had started 6 years prior and growing up with the Filipino nanny. And when did you recognize like the fact that you spent more time with the nanny than spend with your mom?
Hmm. I think the nanny stayed with us.
Yeah. Yeah, for sure. But I'm happy that I know it is hard for working parents and the desire to want a career and balancing motherhood is definitely a juggle of its own. And I'm happy that you were able to develop a relationship with your mom regardless. And I want to go into the moment that everything shifted for you. What did it feel like losing your mother at 14? What did that feel like at the time?
Yeah, it was definitely even the fact it was just the hard part was the fact, like I stated in my story there, that, nobody wanted to talk about it as it was happening. And I was able to just kind of like pretend that it wasn't happening. Even though I do remember I went to chemo treatments with my mom there. I remember we went on like this pretty cool horse um backpacking trip kind of thing. And I think
Yeah,
that was like her way of like wanting to do a final trip to say goodbye and have like fun time together. But still, it was like all these things. I was just like in such a state of denial. And then the whole part of the fact them shipping us off to Greece, whose idea if it was my mom's or my dad's more so. But yeah, it was, such a, especially with everything I know now about trauma and that sort of thing, like it's such a difficult situation for us, to be shipped off kind of deal. And then, like I said, it was a couple weeks of time that I hadn't seen my mom. And then just to see her again like that and to see how much it was really like so eye opening. Like maybe I was able to put the blindfold on before we left because you see her every day. But then to have that
right,
and then to see her again and just like really realizing like holy smokes. Um
right.
and then
I
being
feel
able to
like
spend a little bit of time together.
I can imagine that's very tough. I think that your parents were obviously trying to protect you and to protect your siblings and you. And I think that they had a hard time probably trying to figure out what to do. But I'm sure somewhere, and we may never know, of course, but your mom, obviously, she loved you more than anything. And she wanted to somehow protect you all from probably going through even what she feels like it would have been a tougher experience. But I would love to ask you, what did you feel like? What would you have wanted the experience to be at the time? Would you now in retrospective, do you think that you would have rather have been there during her last days instead of being shipped off? Like if you could change it?
Yeah, it's interesting. So the big bulk of my beginning of my like what I would say was the beginning of my like healing journey and the bulk of my healing was like this session, a few sessions of hypnotherapy. And it's interesting because one of the times what we did was go back to that time, like in the airport when I was saying goodbye to my mom and like that time and how making it different like would help to make it different kind of thing. And what happened like in that session was, like just told me that I would have rather been told specifically like this might be the last time and be able to just say the things that, you wanted to say. So in that session, I was actually able to go back to that time. Adult Athena was able to talk to, younger little and just like tell her like, hey, this is down right now kind of thing, and then just
Yeah,
like offering connection, offering hugs, like that support, like that physical support, myself and then my family too, my brothers and my dad and my
right.
mom. And so
Yeah.
that's just, yeah, that's how I changed it for myself and how I was really able to kind of shift my perspective on that situation for sure. 'Cause really the hardest
I'm
part
happy
was
that
the fact, yeah, that my brothers and we're all just us together. Like instead of us all banding together, we separated, we just all grieved on our own in our own little pot. And unfortunately, my dad, he did get hit the hardest with it because, his whole life shattered too, and he just receded back, unfortunately, so
That sounds extremely difficult and very, very challenging and very, like you said, I mean, everybody's going through a variety of emotions and feelings, but, grief without guidance is just incredibly isolating. And I don't think anybody knew exactly what to do. And like you said, your dad was falling apart and he still had to be the only parent for you all that was here on this side of earth. And that was probably really difficult. But did you ever have a discussion, or how long did it take for you all to come back together, or have you all had that opportunity to come back together?
yeah, I kind of chuckle because um and you know what, this is like a good way to kind of mention generational, like I know that the reason my
Yeah.
dad had such a hard time was because of, his upbringing. He lost his dad young. He was the oldest of his kids, so he had to be I think he wasn't even 10, had to be the man of the family and try to support the family. And I know they grew up in poverty and everything. So it's just,
Gosh.
him never ever working on his own stuff is what made it so that, he had nothing in that situation. And unfortunately still, he's in a very tough place in his life. He's still trying to do certain things, and he's, not getting anywhere. And I know, like, I talked to him the other days, like he did. And then my two brothers, yeah, you know, uh, like nobody still seek the help that they should be. They're still living
Right.
slightly normal lives. They're not like, they're not doing anything wrong in life. No, they're not reaching their full potential as I feel like they probably could. And they still haven't.
Yeah.
Myself, and especially it's been about the last 5 6 years that I've been on this very strong healing journey, and just things have been snowballing in the positive direction for me, and it just makes me want to get more out of my life, and makes me want to share my story now, makes me want to connect with others. But there's only so much you can do, Emily, you just have to lead by example. I can't go there and tell them, you guys are wrong with you. I just have to show them that, this is where I was, this is where I am.
Yeah, absolutely. And talking about asking for help from other people. Well, I do appreciate you sharing that about your family. And I think like there it is incredibly difficult to move on from grief when it is unexpected. And then even with your father, I'm sure with them being together for such a long time, that was incredibly shattering. I mean, his heart is gone, but I really do still have hope that everyone will one day reclaim their sense of purpose and find purpose in, your mother's passing as motivation to keep going. So that's my hope that I send to you and to your family. And during that time for you, you went into a survival mode mechanism. You shared turning to marijuana and risky behaviors, and even girl, when you say you was 16 and you were talking to the guy that was 5 years older, I was like, technically in some states, I don't know if you was in the South, but it's a little touchy. What do you think you were avoiding in these moments? Do you think that you were using these things to, I feel like I know the answer, but I'm gonna ask you, were you doing those things, were they helping you avoid or were they helping you survive? Did you feel like you needed them in order to survive, to not think about what's next? What was
Yeah,
the emotions that yeah, talk to me.
that's definitely where the marijuana came in for sure. It was like just getting me out stump of just all this emotion that was there. It's just such an easy way to dissociate. So
Yeah,
yeah, daily kind of thing, just to the point where, like I said, like so able to be so dissociated with my body. Like sometimes, I I'm a floating head. Even now, I realize like I very rarely look in the mirror. So it's now that I've been doing more podcasts and speaking on like Zoom, you kind of see yourself there. Like this is the most I ever see myself. So it's all kind of part of my
yeah,
healing journey still because If you're always looking at yourself in the mirror, you can't dissociate away from your body. Your body's right there, kind of thing. So it's
Right.
always this interesting kind of thing for me. And maybe other people can relate. If you don't look, it could be. So yeah,
What emotions felt too big for you to face in those moments?
yes, definitely the grief and just like I couldn't even bring up my mom's name. I couldn't. That's why probably a huge reason why our family couldn't ever talk about it was because if I did try to talk about it, I would just cry. Like I couldn't get words out. It just never. It just stores in your body in such a huge amount that if you kind of turn the faucet a little bit, there's no just kind of letting it trickle out. The hose bursts, and you try to turn on a
Yeah.
little bit, and
Yeah, you rather numb the pain. Did anyone around you recognize your pain?
um yeah, I noticed that some of my friendships changed. Like a good friend, childhood friend of mine, her parents actually moved closer to me, and she started going to the same school as me. She was a year older than me actually, and it was kind of, I don't know 100%, but it seemed like part of the reason was for that support for me. And unfortunately, in that time, I ended up choosing a different friend, because this person smoked weed and drank. So I feel like that's one of my a bit of a regret for sure is not accepting some of the help I guess I was.
Yeah. Well, it makes sense. I feel like sometimes coping mechanisms are just attempts to feel safe. And at that moment, you just wanted to feel safe. You wanted to numb your feelings, and you didn't have a place to properly grieve or to really learn how to accept the help that was being given to you. And did your school help out during that time since they may have been aware of it? Did a school counselor try to reach out and do therapy or anything?
No, I find that interesting. It happened over the summer.
Hmm.
We're never ones that would tell the school anyway. School knew. I do find it interesting though, like grade 8, like I locked in with all my teachers. All my teachers really liked me. In grade 9, pretty sure, or grade 10, I one PE teacher who was like a female, and I guess I was really mean to her, unfortunately, because she wasn't the nicest person to all of us, right? So I would kind of stand up to her. And I remember her one time like telling me and taking me aside and being like, I asked all your other teachers, great kid, like, and she asked me if I was sexist because I was her only female teacher at the time.
Interesting.
And so, I guess, like, I don't even know going back now what it was all about, but I can see it maybe just being about, I never had any strong women in my life. Maybe I was just to her for being a woman and trying to be in my life. I'm not sure. So,
Yeah.
but as far as like, yeah, I think like, I remember her asking, yeah, how's your relationship with your mother? So she didn't know, right?
Oh, wow. Yeah. Wow, it's so interesting because now having this discussion, I don't know who's listening to this podcast right now, but maybe it's an opportunity to see if the parents are involved in the children's life. And I know that many schools have so many different students coming from so many different backgrounds and housing situations that it's hard to keep up with everyone. But when we think about why kids are having, these outbursts, or they're going and trying drugs, or have behaviors that don't seem to be the norm. It's because they're really crying out for help, and they want someone to know and want somebody to say, like, please, like, save me, help me. And they just don't know how to say it. So I really hope that they're able to get that help. When you mentioned that you were like, I guess, like, looking for something deeper in life, you were mentioning that you turned to spirituality and searching for the meaning of life. Can we talk about that a bit? What led you toward spirituality and trying hypnosis?
Yeah, so it's actually interesting. I've always had horses in my life. My mom did start training race horses when I was about 4 or 5, and then my
Yeah.
middle brother, Dimitri, to the race horses, and so it's always been something we've bonded over, and just horses in general. Um, one pony that I owned, actually, she was having issues, and so it was finally to the point where I'd heard about animal communication before, and I just decided, what the heck, I'll just get someone, and it ended up being a lady that I knew. actually the second time I had used an animal communicator, but this was a lady that I knew from she's related to people at the racetrack, and
Mhm.
then she had really good references. So when I brought her to the farm, she was talking about this little pony and all the things, and, like, so many of these words she was saying about the pony were, like, things that I resonate with. She was saying that she was antisocial. She was saying, she had a strong amount of grief. She was saying, like, some trauma from the past. And, like, all of this stuff, like, without me talking to this lady about myself at all, we literally just talked about the pony. I could see all these things, then she's kinda looking at me too, because she knew, that, like, this pony's a mirror of myself. And then I think
Yeah.
I got pretty emotional during that session, and then I started to tell her a little bit about myself, and she had said to me that she does, hypnotherapy for people, and that she thought that it would be a good idea for me if I wanted to. I think it took me about 3 months or so to finally, like, dwell on it and be like, I should really give this a try." And then,
Mhm.
like, yeah, I think we did about 6 sessions together, and then going back to the time of when the last time I seen my mom in the airport there, that's and just really noticed, like, these big shifts. Like, I did cry quite a lot in almost all my sessions with her, but I afterwards,
Yeah.
is when I could feel the difference, the shift inside of me, feel like a bit more expansion inside of me. The next time we could talk about what happened the last time, and I could talk about it with the capacity of becoming overwhelmed right away. So I see these things were me. And then yeah,
Yeah.
we also did like a manifesting thing, where she asked me, like, "Really make you happy?" I had started working in the field, which is what I do right now, still, my day job. And I said,
Yeah.
"Oh, it'd be great to just make the same money and work hours, like throwing that out there and like how that and just the reasons why that would make me happy and stuff." And then like, not too long after, a job opportunity came up where I could work in the office instead of out on the road. So just like stuff like
Yeah.
that, like just such snow ways that my life could change. And then in that tide, like for my husband and I were together for 17 years. We met when I was 16. And we kept people always asked us when we're gonna have kids, when we're gonna have kids. And we just kept saying, no, no, like it's not for us kind of thing. And then it was after the therapy sessions when I just had this new regard for like connection. I was able to like
Yeah.
access love in myself and want to give that love out. And I decided that
Yeah.
maybe I could have a baby. A lot of it for me was that I was scared that my mom had cancer, it's hereditary. Her mom died young too. I don't want to and then get cancer and then die. So that was a huge fear for me, but after working on myself and this healing, and just especially realizing how much stress has to do with your genetics and everything and cancer,
Yeah.
just realizing that I don't live in that same stress that unfortunately my mom did at the time. And
Right.
decided, yeah, the my husband, we decided to try for a baby, that was the biggest change in our lives. And then I told my hypnotherapy about it. And then literally my doctor told me to like wait 3 months because you've been on birth for 15 years. Literally like 3 months to the day after. And it's like, oh my goodness, we're pregnant. And I remember
Yeah.
having the
That's
last session with that hypnotherapist. And then I see test, enter the picture like, oh, by
wow. I feel like yeah, that's amazing. Wow. Healing often does begin. I feel like after we change the story that we carry, and you were able to change that in hypnotherapy. And I want to go to the motherhood part, but before we get there, I do want to know for someone that's listening today that doesn't understand hypnotherapy, can you just do like just a little short description of like what the process is?
yeah, so there's a lot of different ways people think about hypnotherapy. I'm sure it's like the sideshow act kind of thing. And to be
Yeah,
honest, what it does is puts you into just like a very calm, relaxed state, and where you can be a little bit suggestible, as they say. I learn now from like my different healing and then the modality I use with people I don't even like if I was really traumatized, like put under like in a con, but I mean it still has to be you just agreeing to go with what comes, basically. So it's basically like
Mhm.
she would count me down, she'd put me into this very relaxed state, and then she'd say, like, "Where does your body take you? Like, what are you seeing? Like, what's" and basically the gist of any type of, like, healing modalities I find, um, that are kinda going off mainstream is basically, like, your body maybe we've lots of people probably heard the name of the book, The Body Keeps the Score, you know? Like,
Yes, of
the
course. Yeah.
body is kind of like what stores our unconscious mind. Like, our conscious mind and our thoughts are all up here, but everything unconscious is actually in our body. And so basically
Mhm.
by, really relaxing yourself and let body is when like certain memories and certain things come up. Um,
Right.
so yeah, it's just like a modality basically where they get you very relaxed.
Thank you for describing that. Let's talk about motherhood as a mirror, because especially losing your mother at the age of 14, how did becoming a mother resurface old wounds for you?
Yeah, so like I said, it kind of just accelerates you into a healing journey because yeah, you're looking at this tiny version of yourself and my daughter, like, you put us side by side, almost splitting image. So it's like, yeah,
Yeah.
just seeing this little version of yourself. So for me,
Yeah.
actually, thing one of the hard to a counselor, like therapist about this was that being so needed and being like so unconditionally loved, like, when they're on you, crow, that was actually a trigger for being too loved because for so long I'd been, I felt like I wasn't loved kind of thing
Yeah.
after losing my mom even, at the beginning of development and attachment styles and stuff, any kind of competing
Mhm.
for parental attention. And unfortunately, my dad, you know, when I got pregnant with my daughter, the first thing my dad said was, "Oh, good thing someone like Chris to raise his child with, like me." So basically saying,
Oh,
that he wasn't ever really there emotionally. So, that all has effects on you growing up. So yeah, just being so unconditionally loved was actually like a for me. Told my therapist that the one day she's like, "I've actually never heard of that before, but it makes sense." Like, yeah.
yeah.
Now, and then so when my daughter was quite young, I actually took a couple different certifications. The main one being so that's like working somatically with the body, kind of like I was talking about before. Um,
Mhm.
and yeah, so that really helped me work through like these triggers and stuff. Like this
Yeah.
patience thing, like kids will try your patience all the time, right? And if
For
you
sure.
haven't, yeah, and if you don't have any tools, and ways to like regulate that and capacity to just feel maybe the frustration that
Yeah.
comes up, that's when we can lash out, and maybe things that we,
Yeah. I agree. Yeah, I agree with you. I feel like parenthood often reveals what we didn't heal, and unless you work on healing it or getting those skills, then you would lash out, or you could. You have the ability to do a lot of things, and like you said, like, you experience love on a whole new level where you've never experienced it before, and it probably did feel weird and uncomfortable, and you had to figure out, like, how to navigate those feelings because it is your child. But I appreciate you sharing that with us. To begin to wrap this up, I would love to know, like, what does healing look like for you today? What does regulation and healing look like for you right now? Like, are you still doing hypnosis? Are you working on breath work, meditation, nervous system care? Like, what's your thing?
yeah. I haven't done any hypnotherapy. I just did those like 6 sessions, and that was great for me. I'm do like some embodied processing. I swap sessions with people. And at first, talk therapy really did, but I'm actually
Mhm.
noticing now that I have more tools to about that I can go back, and it's actually really great to have somebody to talk things through with, as well as them, get back to the body and then find areas that maybe still are stuck. Unfortunately, the healing now, like we just keep peeling back the
Yeah.
layers because once we once we can kind of get at our own core, then trauma comes in. World's a lot right now for sure, right? So
Yeah, very well. It is.
yeah. So for me, it's like
Yeah,
I
I
love just being out in nature, work with horses still, and I'm developing a
I
business
love that.
where I can do sessions and bring my horses, as
Oh, that's
co-facilitators
beautiful.
for me, with me. Yeah,
Yeah,
for and then yeah, just
yeah,
building this business. I do some podcasts of my own to get the word out there.
nice.
It's like a
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, I feel like I love everything that you're saying. As I always say that resilience isn't strength, it's regulation. It's how you're processing it and through like the breath work and through walking out in nature, through being around your horses, through sharing your story. That's how you can survive it and get through it and also process it so it doesn't feel like a heavy weight on you, but more like strength contained in you that you can carry. You're resilient because of this. I love, everything that you're doing, and you have Athena's wellness wisdom. Can you tell us more about that? Who do you feel called to help with that?
Yeah, definitely. So I do have the free resources like podcasts and stuff. But I'm really leaning towards working with parents. That's where
Mhm.
I'm most passionate about parents and just like caregivers, maybe
Yeah,
teachers or something like that, because it's so important to start with the early years. And yeah, anybody who is a prime, it doesn't even have to be a parent, like I said, but a primary caregiver or interacting with any of our youth. They're the ones that really need to be able to, be coming to a place of resilience in order to kind of break those generational chains. And yeah, and really just to help raise the next generation because that's who's going to be around, that's who's going to make change for our world. And yeah, I
yeah,
just
the kids
really
are our
think
future.
for and I that connection like for so long in my life I was like just don't want to interact with anybody kind of thing. And it's just crazy the difference that once you bring that, you know, once you have that connection with others and and asking for help, it's there's so much help out there. There's so many free resources, also just sessions for people that either do one-on-one or group sessions. Um,
Yeah,
yeah, just for help. There's so much help out there, and feel who you resonate with, especially with social media and stuff. Like before when I just
right,
found counselors and I said it didn't really work, that was just Googling, a counselor, maybe they'll have a little bio or something. But now with social media, like you can literally like hear the stories of the people that you want to work with ahead of time. And I really like for our
right.
listeners, that's an amazing way to go out there and do it and just learn about people first.
Yeah, I agree with you. I love how you're turning your pain into purpose and you're helping the youth, and that's where you feel most called. I think that that's who definitely needs the most help. Not that other people can't accept or receive help, especially, you processing grief at 14 and you doing it all alone and no one knowing you're going through this process besides maybe a close couple of family members like your, best friend at the time's parents moving closer to you, but not anybody at your school. You turn that pain into marijuana, you turn that pain into other activities that wasn't helping you fully achieve your purpose, right? But you mentioned already what you would tell your 14-year-old self through hypnosis, but I know that there's probably some 14-year-old that's listening right now, and they may need to hear a little of it. If you feel so called to speak and to say, if you right now talk to your 14-year-old self, what would you tell her?
Yeah, I would just say, like you're worth it, love, you gotta reach out and just, find those people that are gonna be in your circle and find the right people and just ask for help. Like it's totally okay to ask for help. It's never
Yeah, that's beautiful. That's beautiful. I love that. Thank you so much, Athena. Your story shows us that healing isn't about going back, it's about becoming someone new. And maybe that's also about evolving. And realizing that it may not happen all at once and people may not recognize it. But like you said earlier, that it's okay to ask for help. And I hope that someone listens to this today, that it's okay to ask for help and you need to ask for help. And doing this alone isn't the only way. You don't want to do it alone. You'll progress further by telling someone and them helping you than doing it alone. But if you're doing it alone today, if you're listening and you're grieving, I just want to remind you that you're not broken, you're rebuilding, and you're going to rebuild stronger. And it's okay to ask for help. If this episode resonated with you, I want you to share it with someone who may need it. Athena, I know that you have your wellness wisdom and you're working on some amazing therapy options with horses. If people were interested in following up with you or following your journey, how would they do that?
Yeah, just Googling Athena's wellness wisdom and
Perfect. We'll put it at the bottom of the show notes for anyone that's looking for it. Follow the thank you, Athena, so much. Follow the Resilience Files Unlocked and email us at resifiles@gmail.com if you have a resilience story to share. Until next time, stay strong, stay hopeful, and keep unlocking your resilience. You got this. Your name's Carrie Bernunz, and we'll see you on the next episode.